Hello, my name is Deborah and welcome to the Edit by DH. This is the Dee Unedited series, episode 5. This episode is all about eczema and it's also timely as October is National Eczema Awareness Month. Episode 5 will again just be one episode instead of part 1 and part 2, as I have a very lovely guest and I felt it would make more sense to just do one episode in conversation with Michelle, as we both suffer from eczema. I wanted to do this episode with Michelle as I feel like we don't hear a lot about eczema, and hopefully this episode will be relatable or helpful to some of you watching or listening. Before I introduce Michelle, I wanted to add a disclaimer that neither of us are professionals. We are literally speaking from our own lived experiences of having eczema. If you are unsure or want to seek more advice about your condition, I'd recommend you do your own research or seek professional advice. Of course, me and Michelle will be happy to answer any questions in the comment down below, and you're welcome to DM me as always. Thank you so much, Michelle, for agreeing to be on this episode with me. Please, let's just start with telling us more about yourself.
Yeah, of course. First of all, it's a pleasure to be invited into your podcast. And really excited to share more of my story today and also just discuss all things eczema together. So as a brief intro, I'm Michelle. I'm the founder of Yanyee Skincare, and it's a skincare brand that's inspired by traditional Chinese medicine and my own experiences of struggling with eczema. Full-time, I work in the financial services industry as a product design professional. And outside of work, I love all things to do with personal development, fitness. I have a real guilty pleasure of watching too much reality TV, and I'm a massive foodie as well.
Thank you for your intro. We have a lot of similarities, reality TV and foodie, definitely. Before we continue, I wanted to add a definition of eczema. I got this from the NHS website, which is the National Health Service for those of you who live outside of the UK. So it's described as an atopic eczema, which is one of the most common forms of eczema, a condition that causes the skin to become itchy, dry, and cracked. Atopic eczema is most common type of eczema in children, often developing before their first birthday, but it may also develop for the first time in adults. It's usually a long-term chronic condition, although it can improve significantly or even clear completely in some children as they get older. I also got some interesting stats from the National Eczema Association, which says that 1 in 10 will develop eczema in their lifetime, with prevalence peaking in early childhood. 31 million people have it in the USA alone, which accounts for, I think, 10% of their population. People of all skin colors, races, and ethnicities can be affected by eczema. They put it into categories of white, Black or African American, Asian or Pacific Islander, Native American. It was pretty equal across the board. And it affects male and female children almost equally, but it's more prevalent in adult women, which I found quite interesting. Michelle, when did you first realize that you had eczema?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've had eczema for as long as I can remember. Ever since I was a kid, I remember just really struggling with my skin, always feeling uncomfortable, dealing with a lot of flare-ups, and oftentimes just find myself applying lots of steroid creams, which my mum helped me with, and just a lot of trips to the doctors as well, and trying to figure out, what was causing my eczema, how to manage it, and a lot of just hiding as well, in terms of like trying to hide patches of my skin where I was flaring up. And I think all of those memories are what I think about, sadly, when I think about eczema and the role it's played in my life from early childhood.
No, I can definitely relate to that because I think I've had it ever since I was a baby. And I relate to, your mum applying the creams. My mum, bless her, she suffered so much with my eczema. It was a real concern for her because she never had it herself. So it was a whole new experience for her with her first child. And she said she used to like fan me to sleep, try and stop me from scratching myself. Yeah, there were so many things that she did, which I just feel so thankful for now as an adult. But yeah, I related to so many things that you shared. What would you say is like the biggest challenge of being an eczema sufferer?
Oh, so many challenges. I guess the biggest thing really is coping with it mentally, because while eczema presents itself on the surface, it's visible on the skin. I think it really goes hand in hand with the difficulty of coping with it mentally. I just remember always being really self-conscious. It really hit my self-esteem. So whenever I had a big flare up, my constant, I guess, like initial reaction was always wanting to retreat, not go out. I'm really tempted to cancel plans because I'm worried that I'm going to be judged. It's going to be really noticeable where I'm flaring up. And if I can't get out of the plans, oftentimes I'll be worrying about whether my concealer is hiding the patches of eczema properly. It can become like all consuming, I think, sometimes. You can get wrapped up a lot in, how you're presenting yourself to the world. And it's only, I think, like more recently with creating Yanyee and tapping more into the experiences of people with eczema in the community that I realized, so much of it is what you're feeling about yourself inside. If you're around your close friends and family and people who care about you, your skin is probably like the last thing that they're concerned about in terms of like your appearance. And what they matter more about is your confidence and how you're feeling. So I think it's been a big learning curve to, just accept the bad days when they come and really trying to shut down that voice that's telling me to, go hide, only come out when my skin's like healed or looking better, and just like try not let it affect my day-to-day decisions so much, because I think it really just makes it worse when you hide away, really, and stop doing the things that make you you.
I definitely relate to that. Thank you for sharing that. And I agree with you about the self-conscious thing. Like you said, sometimes people might not even notice and it's just like you're in your own head. But it's hard not to feel so self-conscious about something that is technically visible, right? So for me, my hands are the worst. When I was a baby, I used to have eczema all over and it was terrible, really severe. But now as an adult, I get it in occasional places. It comes, it goes, but on my hands, it's constantly there. And your hands, you use them all the time, right? Whether you're typing, you could be signing something, and it makes me so conscious of my hands. And I just remember for the longest period of time, I used to walk around with my right fist clenched all the time because I used to think that people were staring at my hand. And because of that, I at one point couldn't straighten my fingers properly because I for so many years clenched my fist. But in the end, you have to have a word with yourself. So I completely get that. With you, would you say it's any particular place that you feel most conscious about, like the face?
Yeah, for me, it can present itself anywhere really. So I've had a number of different big full body flare ups in my life, and I can talk about that later a bit in terms of like what I think triggered those big or full body flare ups. But yeah, in terms of where it presents itself, hands is a common thing, especially in winter. They get really cracked, they get really sore. I have a really annoying common spot, like just sort of like under my chin as well. I've always got like a dry patch there that can sometimes like exacerbate as well if I'm not taking care of like my skincare routine or a stressful period in my life.
With me, the worst other than my hands is my face, like around my mouth. And it's at least with your hands, you can put them in your pockets, right? But with my face, especially when it's so dry, especially around my lips and mouth, I feel so self-conscious. And I think what made it 10 times worse was when I used to work in the beauty industry. As a makeup artist, you would have to put on like the company's makeup, sometimes which wasn't the greatest for eczema, especially some of the foundations. And it would literally bring out the texture and the patches. And some of my colleagues, bless them, they were just trying to be, in their mind, helpful, but they would point out my dry skin or the patches. And it would literally make me just shrink and shrivel inside because I'd be like, oh my God. And then suddenly I feel like that's all I can see for the rest of the day. Yeah, I wanted to just share those things.
I definitely relate to that, yes, because I feel like when eczema turns up on your face, you're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because if you don't put makeup on, you're thinking, oh, like it's really obvious, everyone's going to know I have a flare up on my face. But then sometimes when you put makeup on, yeah, it peels, it cracks, it draws even more attention to it, so it seems. So yeah, it's definitely a struggle.
Yeah, and I agree. So you kind of briefly mentioned Yanyi earlier, but obviously for people who don't know, tell us more about your business.
Yeah, sure. So back in 2021, my husband and I launched Yanyee Skincare, side of desk beside our full-time jobs, but we were really inspired by my personal eczema journey and also what I've used personally to help deal with eczema, and that very much is traditional Chinese medicine. And so we launched with the first product called Calming Spray. And with this product, it's a herbal spray which uses TCM ingredients of mugwort, tiger grass, and licorice root. What it does is it calms the skin, relieves itching, and or also protects your skin barrier. So we really wanted to do this because we felt passionate that there's no skincare product in the market today with a TCM angle. And why I wanted to highlight traditional Chinese medicine was that I felt like it really aligned to how I look at treating eczema personally. And that is, you really need to take a comprehensive approach. So, not just on the surface level and treating it with skincare, but so much of eczema needs a look at how you're feeling mentally, so really looking at things from a holistic level. And for me, TCM is one of those systems that really looks at things on the outside but also on the inside. So on the physical side of things, you've got the world of herbal medicine and all the wonderful ancient herbs that actually have been used for thousands of years to treat a wide range of skin conditions. You've also got things like gua sha, cupping, but also they have so many different modalities within Chinese medicine that looks at your mental health and well-being as well. So practices like qigong and tai chi. And I just found it really, really interesting that there's this method of healing that really incorporates mental and physical well-being. And I thought this is sort of the approach that I want to take when it comes to looking after my skin and also treating a chronic condition like eczema, where so much of what exacerbates eczema can be physical external stresses, but also mentally, what's going on in your mental state, what's going on in your inner life. For me, I just really wanted to bring that to the fore and use Yanyee Skincare as a way to help other people see their skin through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine, as well as reconnecting to my cultural heritage and really celebrate the traditions and wisdom that TCM has brought to many people over the years.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. When I was a baby, my mum actually said, well, not baby, child, my mum said that she started to go to a Chinese doctor for herbal medicine. And that's when my eczema actually started to improve. So I just remember this really dark liquid that she would force me to drink, and I was like, no. But actually, over a course of a time, it really helped to improve my eczema, and it's obviously way more natural than anything that the doctor would ever give you, like a GP, especially when they prescribe steroids, right? Before we move on to triggers, because you briefly touched upon it, does Yanyi mean anything?
Yeah, so Yanyee is actually my Chinese name.
Oh.
And it was really important for me to connect this brand to my cultural heritage and use it as a way to celebrate the traditions and wisdom of TCM. And on another level, Yanyi is also just symbolic of self discovery and self acceptance and embracing the fullness of who I am. Because being a cross cultural kid growing up, so originally being from Hong Kong and then moving to Australia and now living in the UK, I found myself in a lot of experiences where I've sort of like navigated the world, moving from like one culture to the next. And so I really wanted the brand to reflect that it's okay to be who you are on so many different levels, all the different levels and everything that you bring. And through also just going through working on myself and dealing with eczema and really accepting its role that it plays in my life. It's all about becoming more confident and comfortable in my own skin. And I just really want the brand to reflect that and encourage others to do the same as well.
Thank you for that. So moving on to triggers, what would you say are triggers from your experience of eczema?
For me, I think it's definitely stress. So when I reflect back on when I've had the biggest flare ups in my life, they are always intertwined with maybe like a really stressful experience. So one of the first times I remember that I had a full body flare up was when I was about 5. And at this age, this was when my family moved from Hong Kong to Sydney. And it was when I was starting school for the first time. And as you can imagine, as a young kid at the age of 5, moving from one country to the next and having to relearn like a language, find a new set of friends, and just adapting to a new cultural environment. For me, I think in hindsight, subconsciously, I really experienced that change as something that was stressful and almost a little bit traumatic. And I think that really reflected in my skin. And I'd say, like, other times that I've experienced full body flare ups as well was about 4 or 5 years ago when I found myself in a job that just left me feeling really stressed all the time, burnt out. I didn't feel fulfilled. And so, again, I think the mental toll of that and feeling anxious also just presented itself in a full body flare up. And so for me, like, on reflecting on those experiences, it's really just shone a light that whenever I'm experiencing like flare ups, it's like a wake up call that my skin's giving me to really look around and see what's happening in my life and look at ways to either manage it, get through it, or make a change really. And on the flip side as well, it's highlighting the importance to actually find ways to minimize stress as much as possible in my life as well. Yeah, those are the main triggers for me. I think stress, and also I have a suspicion that dairy and sugar play a role, but for me it is so hard to give up those foods. So I have tried, really following, elimination diets before, and with some success in the past, but I think it's a constant battle of fighting my sweet tooth and doing what's right for my skin as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you on that. I agree with you about mental well-being being a trigger for eczema, but also I think, like you touched upon, food allergies is a big thing. From a young age, I was told dairy, shellfish, things like that would trigger eczema. But as I've gotten older, I feel like gluten is a trigger for me. I don't know if it's a me thing or if anyone else experiences it, but I know that if I have a week where I'm just eating out and specifically having a lot of like gluten, then I don't know, it's like another level of itchiness that I can't control, especially at night when I'm sleeping. I feel like soaps, detergents, the weather, they can also be triggers. And then obviously it causes other things, right? I mean, the very basic thing is itchiness, sleep loss, then the broken skin. I think anyone with eczema, bless us, really, I feel like only we can relate to these things. I think a natural follow-up to triggers is what helps. What would you find helps when you have these flare-ups? I mean, you briefly discussed about, I really love what you said about being a warning when you have these flare-ups about your state of mind and the life that you're currently living, and to keep that, in check almost. But is there anything else that helps you with those flare-ups, for example, other than
Yeah.
your wonderful skincare product?
Thank you. So, yeah, Deb, just before I answer that question, I just want to raise the fact that there are some people in the eczema community who aren't comfortable with identifying with the term eczema sufferer. And when I learnt about this, I really understood where it came from. So, the reason why eczema sufferer might not be an appropriate description for everyone in the eczema community is because it implies that there's always a certain level or degree of suffering that everyone experiences. And this may not be the case for some people who have really chosen to embrace the role that eczema plays in their lives and are determined to really just, live a full life where we're not letting eczema sort of define us or dictate how much we want to get out of life. But I also just want to acknowledge that suffering certainly does also play a big role for some people in the eczema community because it is it can be painful both mentally and physically. So yeah, just wanted to raise that as an interesting point of view. I
Yeah,
think
no,
in terms of the phrase that's being used.
I appreciate you raising it. Actually, Michelle and I just spoke about this, and we felt like it would be good to raise it as a discussion point because with any condition, I think you will always have two camps at least of what they're comfortable with or what they're not. Personally, I would call myself an eczema sufferer because it does hinder my life and does restrict my life to an extent. Obviously, not so that I can't live it, but it's always there, hiding in the shadows as a reminder, or I feel like it limits me in some of the things that I do. So personally, I feel like I do suffer from it, but I completely get this at the point of other people in the eczema community who don't feel like they are sufferers. I wish I could say I'm a survivor, but because I'm still going through it and it's a long-term condition, I feel like I am still a sufferer present time. How would you describe yourself, Michelle?
Yeah, I think it really depends on when you're asking me this, because I would put both hands up sometimes if I'm going through a flare up and really identify with struggling with eczema. I think at the moment I would say I am definitely like living with eczema. It's still persistent in my life, but it's not playing as detrimental a role as it has done previously for me.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think we have our ebbs and flows. Of there's times where it's particularly bad, and then we might be one way with our mental well-being, and then another day we're having a great day because it's calm and all is well in the world. So thank you for that. So what would you say helps with eczema and triggers and things like that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm sure like everyone in the eczema community has their own toolkit for managing eczema, and we have different ways of handling flare-ups. And for me, mine's a pretty massive toolkit, but I'll share with you how I sort of like look at things. So on the skin level, I really try and keep a consistent skincare routine. And I think that's really important. So never missing like a moisturizing session as soon as I wake up, after I wash my face, in the morning and night. And I'm never without calming spray as well. So really just like rebuilding my skin barrier and treating like itchy skin when it comes. I think that has actually been an essential part of my toolkit. So that's the skincare side of things. But I think it's really important to address like some of the strategies I use when it comes to just how I speak to myself whenever I have eczema or am going through a flare up. So my advice is really just don't be hard on yourself. I think a lot of the times when eczema flare ups happen, you can just blame yourself in thinking, oh, maybe it's because I slipped up and had some dairy or some gluten or sugar, or you're punishing yourself because you're actually going through a stressful period. But I think it's so important to just pick yourself up and just be really kind to yourself during these periods, because the more harsh you are on yourself, actually the worse it can be to recover from that, and the more you can make yourself stressed. So I really think like the first approach is really just, yeah, being kind to yourself and just accepting that it just happens. It comes and goes. Like you say, there's ebbs and flows with having eczema, and just take the day as it comes. And the second thing I'd recommend also is just like reaching out and being open with your struggles, like really being able to speak to friends and family where you can about how you're feeling, about your skin, being vulnerable. And something I've been really impressed by as well through doing Yanyee is just how supportive the eczema community can be. Some amazing content creators like yourself, Deb, about like opening up about, your journey, being vulnerable across, like Instagram and TikTok, just really reaching out into those communities, finding a support network and gathering people around you when times get tough can be really, really good, because eczema is just one of those things where it can be really easy to retreat into a very lonely place and really get inside your head too much. And I think it's really important to fight against that and really connect with those around you. And the stats that you shared at the beginning of the episode about just how common and prevalent eczema is, I think that is really eye-opening, and it just shows that it is so common. But eczema can be one of those things which I like to call an invisible visible illness. So even though it's just so prevalent and so commonplace, sometimes it might not feel that way. You might feel like you're the only one in your immediate circle who's suffering with eczema. So I would really recommend finding a circle of maybe people who also have eczema, or sharing about it with your friends and family, because I think that can really, really help with healing.
That's such great advice. Thank you, Michelle. I agree. I follow a lot of people on social media, and from the numbers, I don't think I've ever seen anyone discuss eczema other than obviously your brand. But I'm sure if we go by the statistics, which is 1 in 10, that's a huge chunk of those people that have it, are going through it, living with it, and aren't discussing it. When people often talk about mental health on social media, and people say, they were so courageous to come out and share that. I absolutely agree. And then for people like us, it's like going through mental health or mental well-being, and then on the tail end of it, we also get a flare up. So it's hard to really like manage sometimes. And I think it's great advice that you're saying to find a community, because there is support out there. We just need to find it, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. And another thing I'd like to add is finding the humor in eczema sometimes can help. I love eczema memes. Sometimes that's what I try to do with Yanyee as well, in terms of like creating skits on TikTok, or just finding ways of injecting some humor into the everyday experience of eczema, because it can just make it seem so much lighter and more relatable. And I think that's really important as well, not to get too heavy and dark about it, which can be all too easy.
Definitely. Now I'm going to start like Googling eczema memes now after this recording. With the Yanyee, you obviously have the calming spray right now. Do you have anything else in the works in the near future? Do we have an exclusive to know whether something's coming out or launching?
Yeah, so we're coming up to just over a year old now. So my husband Jono and I have been really reflecting on, our successes over the past year, what we can do next, and how we can just continue spreading the word about TCM in skincare. So we've been reflecting on some of the feedback about calming spray, which is our first product, and we've been working hard behind the scenes to make some exciting new improvements to the formula, making it even better than it is. And we've also been researching and developing new products to introduce and bringing even more powerful TCMs herbs into the community. So hard at work behind the scenes. And while we have all these exciting plans in the pipeline, me and my husband still work full time. So it's very much about finding the right time, the right headspace to really dedicate as much attention as we can, because this brand is really something that we feel passionate about, because it is something that's just so rewarding when we look at the DMs, when we look at the befores and afters that we've received from calming spray. It's been so positive. So it's really something that we want to continue, grow, and improve over time, so more and more people can learn about the power of traditional Chinese medicine, and also just keep creating and growing a network for people in the eczema community to turn to for some lightness, some advice, and just some education, and somewhere where you feel a little less alone in your eczema journey.
Oh, thank you. I really respect you, because it's not easy to have a full-time job and be running your own business like on the side, which I'm sure you would want to be your full-time business, hopefully sometime in the near future. When I first met Michelle and Jono, is it your husband?
Yeah.
They were vendors at this event selling their products, and I just could tell that it was your own business. Sometimes you have employees or representatives of the brand as vendors at an event, but I could tell it was your own brand because of how passionate you guys were about the products. And I totally bought into it. And also because of that passion, I just assumed that it was a full-time job. I just assumed it was your full-time business. So your effort, everything that you're putting into it, I wouldn't have known otherwise, because of how committed you are to it, basically.
Oh, thank you, Deb. That means a lot. That means a lot.
So I was
Yeah.
actually surprised when you said you had another full-time job. I guess the next natural step to talk about is more resources. So if anybody wants to, look up more information, like I said earlier, please do your own research, reach out to the eczema community, as Michelle said. I saw a lot of information on the National Eczema Association website, which I think is American, but I mean, the information is still relevant. And obviously the Yanyee website, which has a lot of really useful resources. I think you even have videos, right? Or is it blogs?
We have blogs, yeah.
Yeah, blogs. And then also things like the NHS website. Is there any other resources that you can think of that I'm missing, key ones?
One of my favorite content creators is Itch and Bitch on Instagram.
Love the name.
And yeah, the name says it all, right? And I have to give a shout out to this content creator because they make eczema relatable. So when I mentioned about injecting humor, lightness into living with eczema, yeah, I definitely recommend checking Itch and Bitch out. It's a great way to just laugh about eczema, and they have nailed the eczema memes trend as well. So
They've just
definitely
gained a
recommend.
new follower. And I just love the fact that even their handle alone makes you smile. And like you said, you instantly know what it's about. So thank you so much, Michelle, for being a guest on this episode. Please support Michelle and, more importantly, the brand Yanyee by following them, showing them some love. Please also like this video and comment down below if you found it helpful, if you found it interesting or learned anything new. Also, if you guys are living with eczema yourself and you have any resources or tips and tricks or advice that you'd love to share with us, then please leave it in the comments down below. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being a guest. I really enjoyed having you on, and I will see you guys on the next episode 6 of Dee Unedited. Take care.